Hello, I'm Jelelle Awen. This is day 19 of 33 in this series that I'm calling Deepen. And we're really going into deeper waters here and introducing you to these different aspects of self that seem to have primarily formed during this lifetime in response to 3D consciousness. There's just seems to be this natural, organic, it's a self-survival mechanism to create these parts of ourselves. And what the parts really do is allow these energies that can be really intense at times, a way for us to digest them is to become them. And the topic for today and the part for today is a perfect example of this, and that is the inner punisher. And I call it inner punisher rather than inner critic or inner judger or something lighter, because there often is quite a strong punisher energy to this part of us. So punisher really captures it, really goes right to the heart of the energy of this part. And it's really beyond just being critical. The punishment aspect of it is something I'm going to talk about today. And that is an ongoing looping pattern of punishment and then corresponding shame. And it's this punisher shame looping reaction that is actually at the heart of it, I felt over the years, in myself and in others. That is the real mechanism here. So starting with why all of this punishing energy, like where does this come from? And it feels to me like this is just a big aspect of 3D consciousness, is this judging this from that. It's very dualistic, right? Things are light or they're dark, they're good or they're evil, and they're pretty or they're ugly. And it's this extreme kind of mostly black and white contrasting that I think represents the densest of 3D consciousness. It's what we were here to play with, is this duality, is this contrasting, is this polarization. But when we look at it from this filtering of judgment, what's missing is love. So it's not that discerning is bad. It's not that discerning one thing from another. We need to be able to discern if something is what we want or we don't want. We need to be able to decide if it fits us or doesn't fit us, what our truth is around something. But judgment comes in, punishment comes in when love is withheld. So what we're really feeling as we feel the inner punisher is the part of us that withholds love while it's discerning something. So what we want to feel then is, what love does this part need, so that it can still offer these gifts of discernment, because it's very discerning, but offering it more and more with love. Love toward self and love toward others. So this punisher really transforms. I've experienced this in myself. I had very critical parents, a lot of punishment coming at me, not only in the form of criticism, but also I was grounded, kind of perpetually grounded, which is such an interesting phrasing, isn't it? Grounded. So I had a lot of that energy coming at me. And what happened for me, and what I think happens typically for more empathic and sensitive people, is that they turn it inward. So this criticism that's coming at them, a part is created that then can hold that criticism and turn it inward. And the reason the punishers have told me that they do this is to protect, is that it hurts less if there's already judgment going on inside when you receive it from the outside. So one of the pieces for me is I was judged pretty harshly by my parents for my physical appearance when I was a teenager. They're very critical. And I part of me turned that inward. When I first met my Punisher many years ago, it actually was half female and half male. And I drew a picture of it, and it had two faces, and then both were very angry, bitter faces. And it feels like that represented the judgment that was coming at me from both my stepfather and my mother. So my Punisher would internalize that. It would form out of that. So learning to love this two-faced, very angry energy inside of me that was basically telling me I was crap and that I was ugly and that I was worth nothing. This is really challenging. It is really challenging to get bigger than the Punisher, to be love and to love a part of yourself that doesn't want to be loved, that is inherently, I'm not going to say it's unlovable, because I feel every part is lovable, but it doesn't know how to love itself. It has a completely opposite energy. And in fact, I'm going to go back now to what I was talking about. What I identified for myself was that this two-faced Punisher really made my inner child feel like yuck, a lot of hurt, a lot of shame. So the Punisher would come in, you're ugly, you're not worth anything, whatever the message was, and my inner child would just crumble under that. I'm not worth anything, and the hurt. So always, if there's a punishing voice inside of you, there's a corresponding young one, usually young, that is feeling shame. So it's really a bully, and we could say a victim kind of dynamic going on there. So when you start to realize that this is not the same part, there's a part that's judging and there's a part that's receiving it, then you can start to be in the middle of that dynamic. You can start to love the judger, which, as I said, can be challenging, as you are soothing and comforting and being with the young part that feels so sad. That's what happened for me, is I was able to be with this hurt in my young part and just love her and love her and love her as I was working with this Punisher. So I think every Punisher I've ever met has this presenting energy that can be quite intense. Sometimes they really are into the whole dungeon whipping, punishing thing. Sometimes it's much more subtle. Sometimes they're just deep in shadow. So in the guided meditation today, we are moving toward your Punisher. You may not actually meet them today. That's fine. You'll start to maybe get a feeling sense. If you can start separating this punishing voice, that's the whole point of it. That's what we're going to begin with today. At the same time, you can begin to feel, we met our inner child some videos ago, so you can start to feel the energy of that inner child and where it relates and what its woundings are, so you can be with that inner child. It's interesting too, what I found is that the protector is kind of caught in the middle, the protector part. So the protector sometimes will align with the Punisher when it comes to self-defense. Like I said, okay, let's provide this punishment because it'll keep them small, or because there's a source of criticism in your life on the external. They're a parent or a mate or a boss, somebody that's very critical of you. So there's a reason why it's staying locked down. So the protector will work there, but also the protector is very protective of the inner child, right? And the inner teenager. And these are the parts that get so shamed. So the protector is trying to protect and guard them from this Punisher energy that's coming in. So this is an example of an inner polarization, a very uncomfortable one. So you have this punishing energy coming in and this corresponding shame, and then a protector that's caught in the middle and doesn't know what to do with all of these energies, which was the exact experience that most of us had in childhood. So I've described a dynamic where the judgment and the punishment is turned inward, which is what I have found with almost all of the people that I work with. But also, it can be turned outward. outward punisher focus is hypercritical of other people, or other people just can't really do anything right. There can be a lot of control in there too, and that's kind of more of the inner mother or inner father energy, matriarch and patriarch. But for now, if you look at that from a punisher perspective, it's just been pushed outward. So actually, what I've come to realize even about my parents, they were on the receiving end of criticism. So they pushed it out at me, but it was inside too. They were quite critical and punishing of themselves inside. So that it wasn't comfortable either way. It wasn't comfortable inside and it wasn't comfortable outside. So in a way, they were innocent. They were just passing on what they had been given. And that allowed me to forgive, which the punisher really needs to do eventually, is forgive. And in that forgiveness of receiving so much punishment, it can then begin to soften and lighten and no longer be withholding love. So where the punisher transforms to is this capacity and ability to offer truths and discern things with love. I notice in sessions, I'll say to people, we'll start working with their punisher, and I'll say, when I give you a reflection, do you feel like I'm judging you? Do you feel a punishment coming from me? And they will say, no, I don't feel that at all. I feel like you're not judging me. You're noticing something. So that is the absence of this punisher energy that I'm talking about. That is years of working with this part of myself, so that when the discernments come through, there's still love connected to them. I'm not 100% on that. Sometimes I might have a charge, but if I feel a charge, I go there pretty quickly. Why is love being withheld? What's going on? What's the trigger? What's the projection? I'm able to do that fairly quickly. So you can do that as you realize and feel your punisher, as you feel that they're not actually a punisher at all, and they're meant to transform and integrate into the ability to discern, the ability to bring intuition forward. People will say to me, I know I have a lot of intuitions, but I'm not connected to them. But when we go to the punisher has a ton of intuitions, a ton of discernments and truths, that it's just that it's occupied in this punisher shame loop. And the punisher shame loop is kind of an addiction, that we become, almost parts of us become addicted to this suppressed feeling, this smallness feeling of being on the receiving end of this kind of internal dialogue that just crushes our confidence and our self-worth. And there's a reason. This is probably the biggest point I want to make about this part in particular, is that there's always a reason for why it's the way that it is. So it's not just cruel, it's not evil, it's not dark. It took in a whole heap of judgment from some form or another, even just living in 3D reality that is so judgmental. And also other timelines too. This can definitely be the case. So it took these energies in and isn't expressing them because it doesn't know any different. It doesn't know how to be different. And because also, again, this kind of becomes an addiction, this punisher shame looping. So as you become conscious of it, you can extend your heart to this part of you that usually so desperately needs it, and yet has almost spikes going outward that you have to, keep going closer to get closer to it. It really does shift then to a pretty keen discernment. Yet people don't feel judged. And you can discern about yourself. You can reflect about yourself. You can understand yourself with clarity without the judgment. And that's a difficult one for a lot of seekers, a lot of people growing. What I find is they're quite astute about themselves, but there's an underground judgment or punishment of themselves, and they're actually using the healing modalities or the spirituality to perpetuate that judgment. of themselves, that they're not good enough, essentially. So if we can get through the layer of the punisher, then we can start working with the deeper core unworthiness that is underneath there, often held by the inner child. But it's like we kind of have to get through another layer here, just like with the protector. So hopefully that's stirring something, you're thinking differently, you're feeling something differently about a critical voice. Sometimes I want to say the punisher voice is subtle, and it can be interesting to see what triggers it, when it comes in, what it reacts to, and how it expresses. So this is the journey that we're starting today. So we will go ahead and close our eyes. Start to bring your focus to your inner world. Feel and see lots of white light around you. Fill your heart up with love. We'll need a heart beacon today. And I'm going to invite you to bring in whichever divine feminine, excuse me, and divine masculine guides that you most get comfort from, that you're most connected to. It can be any of the ones that I've mentioned in previous videos or haven't mentioned. So invite in now a divine feminine, face of mother, that you get the most comfort from, most love, most compassion. For me, that's Mary. Mary can feel compassion and forgiveness for any energy. It's really stunning. And she really helps us feel that for ourselves and toward parts of us, like the Punisher part. And a divine masculine guide that you get the most comfort from. Feel the most compassionate energy in your heart space. Especially masculine compassion, because typically the Punisher is male. But not always. And for myself, I feel Yeshua in his compassionate brotherhood. His teachings were absent of judgment. They got distorted, but in their purity was this capacity to see the goodness, to see everyone as divine love, to see everyone as a brother. So I'm going to go forward with Mary and Yeshua, but as always, whichever guides work for you. See your pathway through the woods as we journey toward your castle. As you connect with your castle today, it may feel a bit different as we are inviting a connection with the inner punisher, it may feel a bit darker or in shadow. I see this beaming coming out of Mary's heart chakra and out of Yeshua's as well. It's really beautiful. They're sort of like divine torches. So there's lots of light here, lots of support. We're going to invite your protector to meet us. If you haven't met your protector yet, they're the guard of the castle. And the castle is your essence. So take a moment to greet your protector. Your protector may already be shifting through this video series, changing form, not as much armor, no longer has a weapon, just shifting in the connection with you and receiving your attention. Communicate to your protector that you would like to meet your inner punisher, and then receive from them how they feel about that, how your protector feels about you meeting the inner punisher. They may be concerned. Listen to that concern. They may be relieved. Let your protector tell you about the inner punisher. They probably have a relationship of some kind. Your protector may even show you an image, starting to show you where the punisher is. The inner punisher may be in the castle. It may be beneath the castle. Maybe in a dark forest behind the castle. Ask your protector if they would lead you and me and Mary and Yeshua to meet your inner punisher. If you feel a bit foggy now, or like you can't see or feel anything, that's okay. This may be as deep as your protector will let you go right now. It may take time to build trust and connection. But if you are starting to get a sense of where your inner punisher is, begin to move toward that space with love in your heart. Usually inner punishers are in a dungeony kind of atmosphere or a dark room. They seem to prefer that. If you feel any energy inside of you that is afraid to meet your punisher, or is starting to feel shame or hurt, that is probably your inner child or your inner teenager, and you can send reassuring energy to them. There's so many dynamic things that can happen in this. I'm trying to cover all of them. But really, it's your journey. We want your inner child to feel safe, though. They don't have to relate with the inner punisher. Starting to create a buffer between this punishing energy and the innocence and sensitivity of the inner child. So go now to your inner punisher. Take in what they look like. What they feel like. They might be quite spiky at you, or tell you to go away, or strong energy, or they might just be kind of head down, defeated. I'm not worth loving. I'm not worth knowing. Just extend your heart to them, no matter what their reaction is. I'm feeling this is a lot for them for today, so rather than asking more questions like I did with the teenager, I think we'll just pause now at this connection, at this beginning connection. They might, by the way, look like one of your parents, particularly if they were critical of you, or a grandparent, or a teacher, or a mate. And that gives you more idea of how they formed. If you want to linger in this space, you can pause the video, of course, and ask them some questions about their world. When do they feel judgmental? Why do they criticize or judge? What have they experienced of judgment and punishment? These are some of the things you can ask them. And we'll also let them receive some Mary and Yeshua love. I see Mary and Yeshua sort of staying in the room with them, like two night lights, beaming love in the room, and letting your inner punisher be in that energy for a while to receive, not expecting anything from them. And we'll move out of the room or the setting. Back to the front of the castle. Say goodbye to your protector for now. And open your eyes. So that may have been an intense experience for you, or sort of foggy with not a lot of clarity yet. And as I've been saying, go ahead and trust whatever happened, and you can deepen that connection over time. I also highly recommend having a session with myself or one of our facilitators to connect with this part, to help you with the loving energy, to help you with the separation from the energy and from the punisher, from the inner child. It's kind of an advanced piece of process. So I wanted to give you a bridge toward it, a taste of it today. And it can be incredibly empowering and really transformative to move this energy. So, thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you tomorrow.